Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted Podcast. Guys, we've got a great one about favoritism in the vet clinic. We are talking about a question from the mailbag. That was a wonderful, generous question. They said many, many nice things that we did not read on the podcast. But I just want to say to the writer, thank you very much for the kind words that you said. Anyway, this is about, hey, we've got some doctors that kind of have favorites. And we have some people who really like to work together, and they're clearly friends inside and outside of work. And it can make the rest of the team feel like they're not included. Or you walk in and these two people are talking, and they just suddenly lower their voices because we don't want someone else to overhear what we're talking about. And that it has an impact on the culture that's not a positive one. And so anyway, we dive into this. I think it's a really fun episode. There's a lot of stuff around managing doctors and support staff and managing them together that I think people will enjoy in this episode. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into it.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and the one and only Stephanie, I'll be your father figure, Goss. I protect
I know,
the
I'm sad because
family.
Thank you. I was like, can you please really sing that for me?
I was like, I walked right up to the edge and I panicked. I just chickened out at the end. I'll be your father figure. I drank the brown liquor. Yes, that's what's happening in my house. Yeah. How are you doing?
Hi. I am good. How are you?
I am sad. I will just be honest and say I am sad. I went on college visits with Jacqueline, my oldest daughter, last weekend.
Yeah.
And I have not had a problem at all with college visits. I have been like, this is great. I'm super happy. Like, we're looking at places. But there's a school in Pennsylvania, and I won't say what it is. But like, there's a school in Pennsylvania.
I suspect I know what it is. Good for her.
And she's like, we got there, and like I just see, she's like,
she fell in love.
This is it. And I could see that, and it bothered me. And then like the financial aid person came up to us, and I was like, look, we're gonna apply to a bunch of schools, and we're gonna see like what kind of financial aid support things we can get, and then we'll make a choice. And he was like, well,
let me tell you about what we can do for you.
Let me tell you about what we can do right now, but it will be contingent probably on going early decision. And Jacqueline was like, we have to look at this because I might want to go early decision. And suddenly my long runway got real short, real fast. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't like where this is going.
I don't have a runway anymore.
And so, yeah, I don't have a runway anymore. And then the thing that just broke me was we went to lunch and they gave us meal tickets to go to the cafeteria. And they're like, we have some of the best food in Pennsylvania. And Jacqueline's eyes were huge. She was like, do you hear that, Dad? Some of the best college food in Pennsylvania. And I was like, no, I'm sure it's fine. And so we were in the cafeteria, and like my wife and Jacqueline had already gotten their food and gone out to sit down, and I was just in the serving area, and they had like an Asian bar, and they had an Indian thing,
all
and
the
like
things.
they got all the things. And so I'm sort of paralyzed by indecision for a moment, and they're playing music, and Fergie comes on the radio, and she's singing, "It's time to be a big girl now, and big girls don't cry." And I just suddenly I couldn't breathe. Like my chest just got, she's like, and I'm going to miss you like a child misses their blanket. And I'm just like, but I've got to get a move on with my life. It's time to be a big girl now, and big girls don't cry. And like my eyes were stinging. I like seriously, I couldn't. I had to put my hand on the juice bar for support. I was like, I'm just gonna eat this corn, and I just had to just go sit down. They were like, you didn't want more food? I was like, no, I'm good.
No, I'm good.
And I have not been good since then. It's been like 5 days, and I am just very sad. But it's hard. It's hard.
I mean, okay, as your friends, I'm gonna empathize with you and say like that it's got to be hard. I'm not looking forward to that. Like I'm not at all. Riley just got her driver's license.
Yeah, all those people who have a good relationship with your kids, like it's. Like, no one told me that it was going to be awful. And it's...
So, like, I empathize with you. I empathize with you. And also, go Jacqueline.
Yeah, totally.
That is amazing.
She should.
And I'm super excited. And also, like, I know that you were kind of excited that originally she was thinking maybe she wanted to be a little bit closer to home, it's like far enough away.
It's not even that
you guys weren't in her business.
Yeah. So I know she was thinking that, but I'll tell you, like most people are like, oh, it's because it's in Pennsylvania, it's far from South Carolina. I don't think it's that at all. I really like let's be honest, like if she went to school an hour, like what am I gonna go hang out with her? Like she's got her whole life going on. I think it was more about her excitement to be there, and I think that was it.
Like
it was
she
just
wants to start her life.
Yes, she is like, I'm good to go. I remember my mother-in-law tells a story about my wife, and the first day of school, like my mother-in-law shows up ready to take my 5-year-old wife into school, and they got out of the car, and my wife was like, "Don't worry, Mom, I can take it from here," and then just walked away. And like all the other parents are like leading their kid by their hand, and my wife at age 5 is like, "I got it. See you later."
Mm-hmm. I can 100% see that being little Allison.
Oh, totally. And so anyway, it's that, but it's like there's nothing to do for it. You know what I mean? There's nothing I would want to change. I don't want to talk her out of this, and I don't want her to feel like I'm unsupportive of this. It's funny, like Uncharted Andy is like, go follow your dream, do this.
Right.
But then Dad Andy is like, oh, how did we get here?
How did it go so fast?
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough.
It does.
But
it does. It goes fast.
But also on the trip, I ran into some Uncharted fans. So I was at a vet conference, and they were like, "Oh man, I got to get my weekly dose of Stephanie Goss." But what was funny was I got your name wrong. They were like, "I get my weekly dose of Stacy Goss," and I was like, "Stacy Goss,
yes,
can't live without her."
Listen, I have 3 brothers, and so I have spent my entire life responding to pretty much whatever comes out of people's mouths. It's fine.
There's 3 stories I want to tell you real quick. So the first one was,
oh my gosh,
someone came up to you. Someone came up to me, and they were like, "I did the exercise that Stephanie talked about with my staff, where they all sat down and they wrote something they admired about the person to their, to one side, and they passed it to the other side, and we passed it 3 times, and then we gave that person the card about the things."
Did everybody cry?
Oh, tears everywhere. They were just like, it was just tears all over the place, and they were like,
I love it.
It was such a good, healthy thing for our team, and I wanted to make sure that I passed that story on to you, that they did. But yeah, I thought that was,
I love that.
I thought that was a great one. The other one was, one of these made me really happy. We had somebody that I talked to who was like, "I listen to you guys every week when I mow my lawn." He was like, he has like a riding mower, and he's like, "I put Uncharted on in my headphones and I ride my mower." And so like the fact that guy's riding every week, and he's like, "I look forward to it." I was like, "I'm going to put on Uncharted and mow my yard," and that's what I do. I thought that was great. And the last one is going to make you the most happy was I had someone who came up to me, and they were like, "I was at a funeral." They were like, I was at a funeral. And it was yes. And he was like, and during the funeral, as everyone, like they were doing like the entombment, and they were at the, at the gravesite. And he's like, put my hand in my pocket, and it activated my phone. And Andy Roark goes, "Hey, everybody, I'm Dr. Andy. It's me." That's what it was. "It's me, Dr. Andy Roark. And the one and only Stephanie. You make my dreams come true, Goss." And I was just like, he was like, I tore my suit pants.
Oh my God.
Trying to get the
phone out. Trying to get it to silence it.
But like, he was like, it was all queued up, and like, I stuck my hand in my pocket, and everyone at the funeral was like, "What was that?
What in the hell?"
Yeah. I thought that was like, I was like, I'm really sorry that happened. Also, that's really funny.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That was a good one. I'm glad you saved that up. That was worth waiting for.
So anyway, those are all making me feel better. So anyway, but that's that.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
Go.
So you get to tell 3 stories now, and this episode will be 8 minutes long when we finally get to it. I know.
Well, see, this is what happens. We haven't seen each other in a while.
Yeah.
And like, before when we were working together every single day and we were recording,
couldn't get away from
I feel
you.
like,
yeah, I couldn't.
Right. We were just done with each other. I was like, okay, let's get to business. Let's do the thing. And now we don't see each other. And so it's like, oh, I saved up all these stories to tell you.
Oh, yeah.
No, things are really good. It's really busy. And I am knee deep in all of my projects planning for 2026. I'm working with some clinics, doing annual planning. I am planning for Pride VMC and thinking about what things are going to look like. And I'm getting really excited. Like I'm really excited for the possibilities of the new year and all of the fun stuff that is coming. And I was working on plotting out my schedule and seeing where we're going next year, travel-wise and conference-wise. And, it's the back half of the year when we're recording this, but VMX will be here before we know it.
Yeah. Dude,
it's just like right around the corner.
I'm hoping to meet a bunch of our listeners at VMX. We got the Uncharted conference on Friday, January 16th. It is open to the public. We would love to have people come along and hang out with us. But I'd love to see people in Orlando. Yeah,
it's going to be a very, very busy week. I've got some meetings before that, and then the Uncharted conference, and then VMX, and it's just, the new year is going to be here before we know it, and it's busy. So, but things are really good. Things are really good.
It's definitely the pace is picking up here. Like we're getting into the holidays, and it's going to be a blink of an eye.
Yeah, and so I'm excited about today's episode because I think that this is going to be. I think that it's one of those topics that is probably going to make some people squirm a little bit because it's not really about big drama, right? Or super bad behavior. It's about something that feels really good and seems harmless, but I think really has the potential to do some serious damage to culture from the inside of the team. So there's someone who wrote in, they've got a big hospital, excuse me, and they have a team of 35 or 40 people with all of the doctors. And so what the leaders of the hospital have noticed is that they have some younger doctors in particular who've gotten really close with one or two technicians. And this is where the squirming starts to come in. Like they have doctor technician relationships that are like their besties outside of the clinic. And so we all know what that looks like and feels like. There's inside jokes, there's social media posts with them, doing things together outside of work. It's that this is my person, this is my tech kind of energy. Mm-hmm. And as a result, there are team members who feel uncomfortable and or excluded.
Yeah.
And so they gave us a lot of backstory information, but basically they've cleaned up. There was some talking behind people's backs and gossiping that was happening. And they're like, look, we've cleaned up the gossip, but the team vibe and that connection as a group still feels really off, because when a pair of friends walks into a room in the clinic like that, people can feel it. Everybody's body language changes. The desire to like whisper to each other kicks in. And it's that feeling of like, oh, people are going to talk about this and people are being left out, right? Like, it feels like, to me, it feels like when you walk into the high school cafeteria with your tray and you're just like, where do I go sit? Because everybody seems to be friends already and you don't know who to hang out with. It's that kind of energy. And the manager said, I'm assuming good intent. Like, I don't think anyone's trying to be mean. The doctors are just really trying to build strong working relationships. But from the outside, that friendship energy feels like it's starting to cross over into the exclusivity, where people are being excluded from the conversation and unintentionally made to feel like they are not a part of the group.
Yeah.
And so a mailbag ended with like, what does done look like here? How do I fix this? But then like, how do I draw the line for them between healthy friendships and professionalism that doesn't involve favoritism, which I thought was a great question. And how do I help them create a boundary between, like, we hang out after work, which is fine, I don't care about that, but how do I keep it from being, we've created this little inner circle that shuts out the rest of the team? Yeah. And what does done look like there? Yeah.
What's interesting about favoritism is, as you said, it's sort of this subtle force, but it's got a lot of toxic problems. The ones, everything you said is true around like the gossip, and I think a lot of people have that feeling of being excluded. But what happens underneath that I think is even more important is when you have favoritism in the practice, and some of the vets prefer some of the other people, and people know that, there's a real problem with people feeling that they're being treated unfairly. There's the idea that I'm not going to get opportunities. If cool cases come in, I'm not going to get to see them. If someone is going to get taught a thing, it's not going to be me. And again, and we tell ourselves stories. I bet she got a raise. I didn't get a raise. I bet, my performance is never going to be, that high because other people are getting high ratings because they're friends and I'm not one of the friends. And that may be true and it may not be true, but it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. What matters is that perception of unfairness. And so that's the real toxic problem to me. And you can get a lot of resentment, but you can get people who feel like their efforts are not appreciated. They feel like they're not appreciated. Like when they go above and beyond, they don't get the same pats on the back. But when one of the friends goes a little bit above and beyond, they get celebrated in a big way. And that is unfairness around compensation. And it's not compensation in a financial sense, but it's appreciation, it's validation, it's access to mentorship. It's all of those sorts of things. And so that's what, and a lot of people miss it. They go, well, this isn't a big deal. It really depends on the stories that other people tell themselves and how unfairness is being perceived. And so I do think it's a significant problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was one of from a headspace perspective, when we think about like how to tackle this, I think I had that at the top of my list. Other people's perception, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
That's if their perception is impact to them.
Yes.
Like even if the doctors have innocent intentions, like your example is really great. When you have a team member who goes above and beyond and you're like, hey, cool, thanks. But like when your best friend does something good, you just naturally, your human brain is like, hey, bestie, thank you. Like rock on, and you unintentionally give more energy and effort. You put it out, and it's not. That's the problem. Is I don't think that any of this is intentional, and this leader felt that way too. Like I don't think that they're intentionally trying to exclude people. But it doesn't matter what the intention is. Other people's perceptions and how they feel about it, the way that lands with them is what matters most, because it does the idea that it looks like favoritism is enough to create harm in the group, in the team, regardless of whether the favoritism is actually true or not.
I think that's the big first part of headspace for me is 100%. This is one of those perception problems where because we deal with humans, the way that they perceive the situation is what is going to drive their emotions and oftentimes their behaviors. It's not necessarily about what is true, but if they think that they're being seen as less than, or they're not appreciated, or they're not getting access to opportunities, then that they're going to behave as if that's true. I think the other part of headspace for me is, and you've already really hit on this really well, think about how this happens. And there's a couple of things where people say, I just enjoy working with this person. I know them well. I trust them. It can be very innocuous. And I think that it's good to assume good intent, of course. But I ask that sort of from a headspace standpoint is, one is go ahead and go through the process of assuming good intent. But then also, before you fix this problem, you do really need to actually take that question seriously of why is this happening? Is it happening because we're just friends and we enjoy each other? Is it happening because some people have been trained and other people have not been trained? Is it happening because you don't have uniformity of training in your practice? And so the vet is like, well, I have taken the time and taught this person, and now they know the things I want them to know. And so I'm just going to take advantage. Like, I want to work with this person because my investment has been made in them, and now I want to maximize that investment. Is this happening? And this happens a lot. Is this happening because we do not have standardized protocols in the practice? And I like the way that Tech A does things, but I don't like the way that Tech B does them, but the other doctor likes the way that Tech B does them, and they get positively reinforced over there, or people don't want me to change what Tech B does, but I don't like it, and Tech A knows how I like it. And you hear that a lot. There's a lot of times when the doctors will say, well, she knows what I like. And the techs really like it too, because it becomes a currency. And you'll see it a lot of times in practice. I know you've seen this, but there's a lot of times where there's pride. And you'll talk to one of the techs or one of the assistants, and they'll be like, well, I know that Dr. Goss likes things this way and Dr. Roark wants things this way. And it's like something I've got. Like it's I have the knowledge of how Dr. A likes things and B and C, and that gives me status over you who doesn't really know how Dr. C likes the surgery suite to be set up. And so I have this status. And you can see those things too.
But the funny part about it is that generally when someone feels that way, they're not intentionally thinking, oh, I am doing this or for the status, the way that I feel like pride in myself when I know and I can anticipate my doctor's moves and I know what they want next because the day feels good. Like when you're clicking and you're grooving and it's like, it just runs really smoothly. That feels really good. And it contributes to my sense of self as a team member and as a technician. And so I think it's that pride. And unfortunately, the side effect of that is what you were talking about, which is that status and that feeling of preference, because I can totally understand on the flip side, if a doctor has a team member who, to your point, knows what they want, knows how the things should get set up, helps their day run smoothly, and then they have a choice between that person and someone who doesn't have the same level of training, why wouldn't they want to choose the person who's going to help their day run smoother? That's just, I feel like, a human nature thing. And I don't even think that it's a conscious choice for most people. Yeah. And that's the hard part, because to me, I think I love that you said that, and you have to look at what is actually happening, because at its heart, on the surface, this looks like it's about friendship. And I've watched a lot of managers attack this problem thinking that they have to be the fun police and address the clickiness or the friendships. Mm-hmm. But the reality is nobody's doing anything wrong by being friends with people that they work with. There's nothing is not actually about the friendship. It's about the fact that those relationships, whether it's a friendship, this happens too when people date in the same practice or within the same environment, when there are relationships that show up in a way that make the workplace feel unsafe or exclusionary or preferential, that's the problem. And that's a cultural boundary. That's not a personal boundary. Yeah. And so from a headspace perspective, as a leader, I think part of the work has to be to look really hard at it and say, what is it? What are the ways that this is showing up for the team? Is it that currency feeling? Is it that exclusionary feeling like, well, they just get taught all of the things because they're the doctor's favorite? Is it that you do have a training problem and some people do have more training than others? Like, what is the actual behavior that you're seeing? And also, what are the reasons for that behavior? That's what you have to dig for to actually solve this problem, I feel like.
No, I think you're totally right. And so, and we'll get into this one, action steps too. I think the way you approach this really depends on why it's happening. And that's gonna focus. But basically, you're gonna need a two-pronged kind of approach here, right? And one is around systems, and one is around sort of individual coaching. And we'll talk about both of them and sort of how to do them. But at some point, it's funny, because at some point you have to manage doctors like that. Like that's, it's amazing how many practices kind of let the doctors kind of run free and they don't manage it. And it's just, in a lot of ways, like the doctor who has their favorite technician because he's a really good technician, that's really not any different than the doctor that hoards technicians or assistants. And we've seen that as I've worked at practices and I'll look around and one of the vets has got 4 support staff.
Bless her heart.
Bless her heart.
That was my medical director.
Yeah.
Every time I turned around, she's got 5 people over there, and there's the rest of the doctors have no one.
Exactly right.
It's like, what is happening?
Again, they're not bad, but it's just a hyper focus on what they're doing, and it's a lack of focus on the overall team. And that's going to be one of the big things I'm going to hit on with this problem again and again. People aren't bad. Yes. They're just kind of self-centered. You know what I mean? I was literally just in the clinic an hour ago, and you get into the appointments that you're seeing, and especially if there's a walk-in or somebody brings an extra pet and all of a sudden my back's against the wall, and it takes a little bit of experience. It takes a little bit of discipline to not start trying to pull resources, or to at least be mindful of the fact that there's 5 other vets that are all they're not having an easy day either. And pulling resources away from them, like there's ripple effects here from me making that call. And again, I think that is a dance that always has to get done in the treatment room. Is we have to build some flexibility to help people, but there are also some boundaries. And at some point, you kind of have to manage the doctors and say, I understand this is easier for you. There are costs of what you're doing to the team as a whole. And again, like if I have super technician and I'm working with her every day, well, then nobody else has access to this information. And also the other techs aren't getting trained, or the assistants aren't getting trained, because I've got the person who would be best equipped to train them. And I'm running him or her through appointments all day. So anyway, there's kind of that. So I mean, we're going to look at the sort of the system. I think the thing about dating is a really good point too. And we kind of wrap up Headspace here and everything. There are people who will date at the vet clinic, and they do not handle it well. And you see it, and it's awkward, and everybody knows about it. And then, and I hope that all of you have seen what I'm about to say. There are grown ass people who actually are mature, and they might date someone in the clinic, and they don't make it weird, and no one else, like, they might know, but they handle it like professionals, and there's that you have seen it work just as well too. So if people can, I worked with a couple that started dating, and ultimately they got married, and they were always the most professional group or pair to work with. And again, they the technician worked with all the different doctors. Like they were a wonderful person to have on the team.
Well, because they probably intentionally worked at how they were showing up. Like that was the hyper aware of it would be my guess.
And you're exactly right. They clearly thought about, how is it going to show up at work? How is this going to affect what we do? How is it going to be perceived? And I don't want you to live in the shadow of what are people going to think, but I do think that you do need be a little bit intentional around controlling perception, as we talked about at the beginning.
Yeah. I think the last thing for Headspace for me leads to the action step, which is when you, as a leader, when you deal with this kind of challenge, I think it's really, really important to remember that your goal here should be about creating awareness of the problem and getting the team to work with you to create a framework, a structure, a social contract, to have them be a part of the ideas around how they want to show up for each other. Because if it feels to the team like this is about shame or punishment, because we're friends, you're punishing us, it is going to go very badly for everybody. And so I think the way that you frame this when you deal with it is really, really important. I think you have to think about talking to them about the fact that you want everyone to feel seen and supported, that it's about equity. To your point, it's not about, it's about creating that feeling of fairness, like that there's equal opportunity for everybody, and making sure that they understand you're not asking them to stop being friends.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
No one wants that. You're asking them to think about the way that their friendship shows up, and making sure that as doctors, whether they like it or not, they are unintentional or sometimes intentional leaders in the practice. And so whether they're an associate, whether they're in an actual position of leadership, whether they're the owner doctor, it doesn't matter. There is a status elevation that comes with being a veterinarian in a practice. And so I think it's really important to tell them that, like, I'm not asking you to stop being friends, for two reasons. One is that it makes it very clear that it is not about them as a person, it's about the behavior. But two, it also helps remove the defensiveness, because if someone hears that their friendship is the cause of a problem, like, they're going to immediately go on the defense, and they're going to, like, our little lizard brains are going to immediately attack back. And so I think that making sure that the team and the doctors, as you talk to them as individuals, really feel like you're not trying to police their friendships, that all you're trying to do is clarify the professional expectations for how everyone shows up at work.
Yeah. So I'll take that even one step further. My hope with this, it depends a little bit on how it's showing up. My hope with this, if we look and say, what are the problems that this is causing? And we say, well, we've got, some techs that are with certain doctors, and, some people are not getting to do things, or it's making the schedule more difficult, or like whatever. Just no judgment. Just what are the problems for the team that this behavior is creating? Sometimes you can fix problems without telling people what problems you're fixing, and it actually does work well. And so honestly, and I'll talk about talking to the doctor separately, but honestly, if this was bothering me, I would think about, why is this actually bothering me? Like, what are we really seeing here? And then I talk a lot about being positive and future facing. I might just not even criticize about what has happened, but I might say, guys, we're starting the new year, 2026. The main focus for me in 2026 is going to be flexibility at our practice. I want to have, and just decide what you want. I want to have assistants that can work in every segment of the hospital. I want to make sure that the technicians and assistants are comfortable with every doctor that we have, and every doctor is comfortable with the technicians and assistants that we have. This is going to give us flexibility in scheduling. It's going to let you guys take vacations and not worry about who's on and who's off. Yes. I think it's going to be developmentally interesting for you guys. It's going to let everyone continue to grow. It's going to make sure that we get to know each other, that we trust each other. We're going to have people who see and understand all parts of the practice, so they can give feedback and spot opportunities for us to innovate, to try things that are different, to learn and grow together. I love that. And you can see exactly where I'm going with this, but I would start to lean into this, and then I would mean it. And it's funny, a lot of times you don't have to get bogged down in the interpersonal parts of these conflicts. Like, there's an interpersonal part, and if it manifests, then we will deal with it. But if I say we're going to be introducing a new system, and there is going to be a new technician-doctor pairing rotation, and each doctor is going to have an assigned, and this is how we're at the practice that I'm at, is I have a tech that's assigned to me in the morning when I get there, and this is we have assigned techs.
Everybody takes turns.
And then we have floater techs, who are the treatment room techs who jump in and help whoever needs help. And I'm not saying it's the only system. I've done it a million different ways. But I do like this system. But
it's a system.
And it changes every day. And sometimes I work with the less seasoned technicians. Sometimes I work with a technician. And I'll just say, I have to be careful as to how I compliment people, and I try to. But basically, I'm like, I wish I could work with you every day. Like, and again, and it's not to dunk on other people. It's just, this person is truly fantastic. Sure. And I'm just like, and so you want to just say, I always enjoy working with you. The things that, and kind of a nerd thing for me, but I like to tell the person exactly why I say that, because that's the positive feedback that I like to give. But then there's other times that I have an assistant, and I have some great assistants, and I have some less seasoned assistants, and some days I'm like, wow, I love working with this person. And other days I go, I am contributing to the growth and development of this person, and that's it.
Just keep telling yourself that over and over again.
Just tell myself. But also, it doesn't bother me that much, because the other vets are going through the same thing. And here's the thing. If that person doesn't grow and develop, the other vets are going to run out of patients before I do. But it won't be Andy doesn't like Kelly. It will be like Stephanie and Andy and Ron and Melissa have all voiced that maybe Kelly's not cutting it. And, and we can make some choices in that way. And, anyway.
Because everybody's contributing good and positively and negatively to that person's development. You're either participating in it and making it happen more quickly and smoothly, or you're not. And then it's on everybody, not just on you.
So a lot of times there is great organizational strength in programming and creating a system that, I'm not going to say it makes favoritism impossible. It makes it much harder. And then if I put this system in, and I'm intentional, and I lean into where we're going, and I talk about my why, and we start to run this program, and then I follow up on it, and following up is important. I make sure people are actually doing it. I check in with the doctors on how it's going, especially really watch it closely for a couple of weeks to get some traction and get it bought into. Yeah. Then I can use positive reinforcement. And when people are working with people they don't usually work with, I will jump in there with my positive reinforcement and say, hey, Stephanie, I see you working with this technician. I know you don't usually work with them, but I saw you guys working well together. And, I want to say, I love how collaborative you're being. I really appreciate you leaning into this. And I'm going to just pats on the back. No. And also, but it's like, nope, just positively and reinforcing it. And then we'll see how it goes. And then here's the thing. Once we talk about this and I start to push this program and I talk about the why this is important, if I have doctors that push back, or if I have pairs or couples that push back, then I'm going to start from the beginning in talking to them about what they're doing and about, hey, we've discussed this, and help me understand, like, you guys don't seem to be on board with what we're doing. Help me understand why. What are your concerns? And we'll start to work through that. But I'm going to start tightening the screws and making those people a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit more uncomfortable and a little bit more uncomfortable. And while giving them a nice, clear, easy path to get on board with where we're going. And that's sort of the system part. But I don't know. It really depends on specifics on whether or not I'm going to wade into, hey, guys, we have a problem with favoritism. I might not publicly own that ever. I might just say, there's a better way. I look and I see, and we have people who kind of consistently work together, and that makes our organization weak. It makes us brittle and fragile, and it opens us up to if people leave or if they're out sick or whatever, then we're just not as good as we can be. And also, people get they stagnate if they work consistently with the same people again and again. And so I would just sort of lean into that, and that's how I'm going to kind of put my shoulder on this, and then I'm going to start to push.
I love that.
Let's go ahead. Let's take a quick break right here, and then we'll jump back in, and then we can kind of do action steps, so we can kind of recap things that we've already pulled out.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right. Action steps for me. I think you have to start with trying to understand what's going on, right? Seek first to understand. And I think a lot of it is to point out the pairings that you see, especially if it's a doctor and assistant or a doctor or technician, and say, hey, Andy, I see that you work a lot with Michael.
Yes.
How is that intentional? I mean, if like, are you guys, is that intentional? And that's it. And that's the question I'm going to ask. I'm going to see what they say. Yeah. And if they're like, I really like working with Michael, I would say, okay, tell me more. Why is it? What's your preference about Michael? What does he do well? Are there things that he does that maybe the other technicians could start to do? And now we're into an exploration phase, but I think you have to start with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, it's about diagnosing the patterns, not the people, right? Like you need to specifically look at the actions and the behaviors, because what you ultimately really are trying to get to, and I love the way that you approached it, from getting them to tell you the why they enjoy it or why they like those patterns happening. You're trying to figure out, like, if someone from the outside, like a reasonably objective person, was looking at this, would they say, after watching interactions with your team, that some people do appear to have better access, better support, different roles, whatever? Because if the answer to that is yes, then that's where you start. It's about the behavior, not the emotion, because that's where we're allowing the bias or the favoritism to happen, is in that behavior. And so when you look for patterns, whether it is in, are they scheduling themselves to only work on days that person works? Are they assigning more cases to one person than another? Are they giving preferential communication to the person? Are they texting with them where they don't text with anybody else on the team? What are the actual behaviors? Because that's not about the relationship. It's not about the person. Yeah. It's about the way that they're showing up and they're acting at work.
Yeah, I see this. And it sounds like this is happening in more than one instance in this practice. If I had a sort of a normal thing with doctors, at some point I'm going to have a doctor meeting. And I'm just going to talk about, hey, guys.
I love that.
And then you get everybody together and you say, hey, guys, I am going to start to make some changes. I am going to be pushing for having the technicians working across the doctors and shuffling. I do want to bring something to your attention. I have gotten some complaints or had some concerns about favoritism from doctors. And I'm saying this to all of you guys. I don't think that anyone means to do that. I don't think anyone's trying to make anyone else feel excluded. But I need to call out to you guys and say, this is something that people have noticed, and I can kind of see it. Part of the reason that we're going to be putting this program into place and starting to make these systems of having people working in different ways is because of that. But also, I just want to ask you guys to be mindful of the fact that people watch you guys and how you interact at work. I'm not asking you to not be friends with people. I am asking you guys to just think about it as, know that you're a leader, know that people care about about you getting your attention and your time, and just do your best to focus on being fair at work as far as making people feel included and not making them feel excluded. Is that okay? And I would start with that conversation and see how it goes. And again, this would follow that conversation of, why do you guys spend time together?
I love it. This is one of those episodes where we're totally in sync, because that was That was my second too, is the doctor meeting, right? Like, I don't think this is the thing that you're going to address with the whole team. I think that this is a starter conversation with everybody. And to your point, I think it is about, hey, the team, we have a really great team. We've got really great connections on this team. And this is where I would, even if the team had told me about things, I would make the effort, like you said, in having the conversations ahead of time. I would make the effort to observe it myself so that I could look at the doctors and honestly say to them, I'm seeing some of the bonds that we have on this team show up in ways that make people, or could make people, feel like they're on the outside.
Right.
And I know that that's not anybody's intention, and I'm worried that that might be the impact to the team. So let's talk about how we can all lead together in a way that feels inclusive, where nobody is on the outside and everybody knows what their role is and how they show up and how they give you great performance, because ultimately that's what we all want at the end of the day. And then you talk to them about those specifics, examples, the body language, the tone that they're using, the eye contact, like all of the things that you're seeing. And in that meeting, I love that you said, I would set the expectation for them that as a team, like high performing team, high functioning teams, have to, this is a non-negotiable, have the expectation that every doctor, every clinician has to be able to work with anybody on the team without there being drama.
Yep.
Because let me tell you, I have worked with multiple teams where there's that one exception and we just don't schedule those two people together. And it's fine until it's not. Yeah. And there always comes a point where it is not okay anymore and it bites you in the ass. So don't set yourself up for that. You should always, if your goal is to be a high performing team, which I think for most of us as leaders, that's what we want.
Yeah.
You have to do away with those exceptions and those exclusions. Everybody has to be able to work cross-functionally with one another.
No, I think you're spot on. I really like that a lot. There's a balance here too. I want to be honest with the vets kind of about what my concern is and kind of what I'm seeing. And a lot of times, I want to lean into their self-interest a bit too, right? It's just an easy thing about working with people in general is everybody's got self-interest. If I can frame this around, hey, I want to make sure that we have the best workplace culture possible. I want to make sure that you guys have maximum flexibility so that you can be off, so that when other people don't, if they're gone on vacation, if they're out sick, you guys feel well supported. I want you to be comfortable, with whoever you're working with and to feel like your patients are getting great care. And so, and just sort of frame it around those things. I want to make sure that you have an outstanding reputation with the team. And I want to make sure that you're not being perceived as somebody who has favorites and who doesn't want to work with other people. That's just that's not the reputation I want you to have. And so I try to frame it around that. But I think you and I are in exactly the same place. Yeah.
I think the system that I would go for with the team, like I would have conversation with the team, but I wouldn't have direct conversation with the team about this problem. What I would do is talk to the team as a whole about creating a system that ensures that there is a professionalism standard for each other. Like, how do we want to show up and be present for each other? So if your team doesn't already have team agreements or team rules on how you show up, how you treat each other, how you communicate with one another, the fact that gossip is toxic, and if you wouldn't say it in front of everybody, it doesn't belong here at work. Like, if you don't have those set in stone rules that everybody, not unspoken rules, written down concrete, everybody knows that this is a rule for how we show up for each other, now's a really good time to get it. And so the way that I would approach this with the team is talking about that system. And to your point, like taking advantage of the new year, or, hey, I just, I've been thinking a lot about this. This is something that I would really like us to do, and approach it from that perspective and get them to tell you what they want the rules of engagement to be. Because I promise someone will be the brave soul that will speak up and say the things once the ideas start flowing about, well, I want to feel like we're not talking about each other, or I want to feel like we all can work together and cover each other when somebody's out on vacation or whatever. That conversation will flow if you set it up. Okay. So I think that that's where I would go with the team reset, is on how do you get them to set up some rules for how they operate together.
Well, I really loved your question earlier of like, how do we make our team feel inclusive and welcoming? I thought that's a really great question to have for discussion. I think we've laid down all the ways that I would sort of start to address the problem from the team level. I would start with the vets, and then I would wait and see what happens. And then if I feel like I need to address this with some of the paraprofessionals, then I would do it gently. And I would do it inside the context of we're already sort of doing these things. And what is sort of implementing these new systems and things like that. And so the way I would say is might say something like, hey, Michelle, I noticed you're still that you and Dr. Jill are spending a lot of time and hanging out. And I know you guys are really good friends. Part of the reason that I'm working to try to, move people around and make sure that we're being more flexible is I really want to make sure that things feel inclusive and that nobody feels like there's friend groups that they're not a part of or that they're on the outside and everything. And I know you guys have a great relationship and I want you to continue to have a great relationship and I want you to continue to work together and to be friends. And I do want to ask your help personally in terms of communicating and working together in a way that's not going to make other people feel like you guys have something special that they're not a part of. And again, that may be true.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure that that's not something that people see when they look at you guys. And it's just, I want us to have a cohesive team. I want everybody to feel included. I want them to feel welcome. And so, it's something you guys will probably have to modify your communication styles because you are such good friends. But I do need to ask you to do that. Can you do that? And then I'd ask for commitment. Can you do that for me, please? Great.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so that's how I have it.
And I think along those lines, my last thing would be similar. Like once you've done the other things, then you're coaching them individually, right? Like if the behaviors continue, then you're having the individual conversations. And some of the questions, I think it's important to ask them to reflect on their own behavior, because I could give them examples until I'm blue in the face, but if they can't see it, it's not going to matter. So asking them something like, how do you think others experience the two of you as a team? What do you think that's like when they work with you? And asking them to really reflect on their behavior. Another one that I have used in the past is, hey, what kind of message do you think it sends to the rest of the team if you and Sarah only ever want to work together? Do you feel like that is creating an inclusive environment? What do you think that looks like on the outside? Getting them to think about it, because then the next step is you want them to work with you to create the goal for the change in behavior, right? Which is, okay, I'm going to try and work with a different assistant every day that I'm here, or I'm going to rotate based on case types, or I'm going to what are some things that they specifically can work on above and beyond the system that you've already put in place for the whole team, where everybody is kind of rotating and you're getting everybody training and exposure and stuff like that. Because ultimately, what I loved about this mailbag was they asked, what does done look like? Yeah. And to me, if you've solved this problem, done looks like the team not dreading certain people being paired together. And so ultimately there has to be some sort of system that changes that up so that it removes and addressing the behaviors, but that it removes that dread for the team, and that you have the ability as a leader, to your point, people are going to take vacation. People are going to get sick. People are going to be out of the office. And what you want in a high-performing team is the ability to be able to mix doctors, technicians, assistants without any tension, without any drama, without someone rolling their eyes or complaining or being frustrated that those two are working together, right? Which is probably the feel in this practice right now.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think my note for those bigger conversations about how do you think this is being perceived, or, what are the behaviors that you think people would notice? I think that I would say that would be my second or third conversation. You know what I mean? I think, again, my hope is with the sort of rearranging the system and talking to the group, that's my hope is that it's going to make it easy for them to fall out of these patterns if they will. And then, and then the mention, often just mentioning to him is enough. If we've made these changes, we've talked to the team, I've mentioned it to him before, and I still continue to see it. I think those questions around, how do you think the rest of the team perceives you and Dr. Jill when you guys, kind of go off and work together in the dental suite? What do you what is their perception of that? And now you can tell that's just sort of the classic feedback escalation that we work on, is start with a mention and then sort of walking it on up. But the nice thing is now we're sort of into an accountability sort of scenario where we had the team meeting, I mentioned it to you, and now we're having a more direct conversation. And I'm going to be documenting just not something they have to sign, but for me, I'm going to be documenting how many conversations have we had, what are the specifics that we've talked about, and I'm just going to be starting to write those things down. But then we're going to walk on up towards severe ramifications if we have to. But hopefully that won't be the case. But that's kind of what I think.
And I think the last two pieces to answer the done question, besides like removing the dread and removing that kind of the ability to mix and match however you need as a leader. I think for me, I would want to know that the team trusts that I, as a leader, am going to protect the fairness and the sense of belonging in the team. Like that would be that on a personal level, that would be a very fulfilling goal for me. And I recognize that that's not necessarily the case with everybody, but I think every leader wants to feel like their team trusts them. And so that's part of done too. Like if I can feel like the team knows that I'm going to address this and trusts the process, I think that is a part of result. And I think having the doctors be able to demonstrate that they are flexible and that they're willing to collaborate and they recognize their seat as leaders, their seat at the table as leaders in the practice, whether they're in positional leadership or not. I think that is a part of the done equation for me too. And so, when you're thinking about how do you solve this problem, thinking about what that done looks like for you and your specifics, and then working yourself backwards using the steps that we talked about, I think can get you there.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think you're right. I do think you're right. I think, the one thing that's hard about defining done is when done is everybody's happy. Like that's a hard done to work towards.
No, because here's the thing. The reality is, like, as leaders, we can't prevent people from bonding. We can't prevent people from falling in love, from dating, and we don't want to. Our job is to prevent those bonds from becoming barriers.
Yeah, I agree.
And so if from a done perspective, if we can do that, it doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy. It doesn't mean everybody's always going to get along, but it does mean that we know how to do the job to remove barriers once they become barriers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thanks for talking to this with me.
Yeah, this was a fun one. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
See you later, everybody. And that's what we got. Guys, thanks for being here. Thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have a question for us for the mailbag, send it to podcast@unchartedvet.com. If you want to come and see us in Orlando in January, come on down. It is January 16th. It is Friday. We are doing this at the VMX conference. We are going to run our event the day before that starts, which means you can come down to Orlando. You can have an Uncharted experience. It's going to be a great one. And then roll right into VMX, the world's largest vet conference. Start getting your fantastic medical CE there. You're going to have friends from the Uncharted conference. You're going to have days to hang out with new people who are just like doing really cool stuff. I mean, you could very likely end up with new friends that will be people you talk to about practice and life for the rest of your life. And so anyway, that's what I've hoped for. That's what we're going to try to make happen. So anyway, I would love to see it. You don't have to be an Uncharted member to come. If you're like, I've always been interested in Uncharted, but it's never been affordable, accessible, available. This is the most affordable, accessible, available conference we've ever had. I'd love to see you there. So anyway, link in the show notes to learn more. Love to see you in Orlando. Take care, everybody. Bye.